The morning sun cast long shadows across the military training ground as recruits gathered for their weekly combat drill. Among them stood Sarah Chen, a petite woman in her mid-20s who had carefully applied her makeup before dawn. Her foundation was flawless, her eyeliner sharp, and her lips bore a subtle gloss that caught the early light. She believed in looking her best, even during the most challenging military exercises. As the drill sergeant barked orders for the recruits to form lines, whispers began to ripple through the ranks. Several male recruits exchanged glances and smirked at Sarah's appearance. The morning air filled with barely contained snickers as they noticed her perfectly styled appearance. "Look at Princess over there," muttered Jake Morrison, a burly recruit from Texas who considered himself the toughest in their unit. His voice carried just enough volume for others to hear. Did she think this was a beauty pageant instead of military training? Another recruit, Marcus Williams, joined in the mockery. Maybe she's lost and thinks this is some kind of photo shoot. Someone should tell her we're here to train for combat, not win a modeling contest. The group around him chuckled, their comments growing bolder as more recruits gathered to watch the spectacle. Sarah heard every word but kept her expression neutral, her eyes fixed straight ahead. She had dealt with this kind of treatment before, throughout her military career. People often made assumptions about her based on her appearance, her size, and her choice to maintain her feminine identity, even in the masculine world of the military. The drill sergeant, Sergeant Rodriguez, noticed the commotion brewing among his recruits. He was a veteran with 20 years of service who had seen every type of soldier imaginable. While he maintained his stern expression, he was curious to see how this situation would unfold. He had learned long ago not to judge soldiers by their appearance alone. "Attention," Rodriguez shouted, his voice cutting through the morning chatter like a blade. The recruits immediately snapped to attention, but the tension in the air remained thick. Some of the male recruits continued to steal glances at Sarah, their expressions ranging from amusement to outright disdain. The training exercise was designed to test the recruits' tactical skills, marksmanship, and ability to work under pressure. It involved navigating through an obstacle course while engaging targets at various distances, requiring both physical endurance and mental precision. The recruits would be evaluated on their speed, accuracy, and strategic thinking. As they prepared for the exercise, Jake Morrison decided to make his feelings known more publicly. "I hope we don't have to rely on makeup artist over there to watch our backs," he said loudly enough for Sarah to hear. "She looks like she'd break a nail before she could pull a trigger properly." The comment drew more laughter from several recruits, and even some of the quieter soldiers began to look at Sarah with skepticism. In their minds, her polished appearance suggested vanity and weakness, qualities that had no place in military combat situations. Sarah remained silent, but her jaw tightened slightly. She had trained for years to reach this point in her military career, overcoming countless obstacles and proving herself time and again. Yet here she was, once again facing judgment based on superficial observations rather than her actual capabilities and training record. The morning drill was about to begin, and Sarah knew this would be another opportunity to prove that appearances could be deceiving. She adjusted her gear methodically, checking her equipment with the precision of someone who had done this countless times before. Her movements were economical and confident, though none of the mocking recruits bothered to notice these details. Sergeant Rodriguez called out the first wave of participants, and Sarah found herself grouped with Jake Morrison and Marcus Williams, along with 3 other recruits. The irony wasn't lost on her that she would be directly competing against the very people who had been questioning her abilities just moments before. As they moved toward the starting line, Jake leaned over to Marcus and whispered loud enough for Sarah to hear, "This should be entertaining. Let's see how long it takes for her to realize she's in over her head." The 2 men shared a confident look, certain that the upcoming exercise would expose Sarah's perceived weaknesses and validate their assumptions about her unsuitability for serious military duty. The obstacle course stretched across several acres of rugged terrain, designed to simulate real combat conditions. Concrete barriers, rope climbs, mud pits, and various tactical challenges awaited the recruits. At strategic points throughout the course, targets were positioned at distances ranging from 50 to 800 meters, requiring different levels of marksmanship skill. Sergeant Rodriguez explained the rules as the 6 recruits lined up at the starting position. Each soldier would navigate the course individually, engaging targets as they appeared while being timed for both speed and accuracy. Points would be deducted for missed targets, and bonus points awarded for exceptional precision under difficult conditions. "Remember," Rodriguez announced, his weathered face serious, "this exercise is designed to push you beyond your comfort zone. Combat doesn't care about your personal preferences or limitations. You either perform when it matters or you become a liability to your unit." Jake Morrison cracked his knuckles confidently, his muscular frame radiating the kind of swagger that came from years of athletic achievement in high school and college. He had been the star of his football team and considered physical challenges his specialty. In his mind, this exercise would be a simple demonstration of his superior conditioning and natural ability. Marcus Williams nodded in agreement with Jake's confident demeanor. As a former construction worker, he was accustomed to physically demanding work and felt certain that his experience with tools and machinery would translate well to military equipment. Both men shot dismissive glances at Sarah, who was quietly checking her rifle and adjusting her scope. The first recruit began the course, struggling immediately with the rope climb and taking several extra seconds to engage the first set of targets. His shots were adequate but not exceptional, and he finished with a respectable but unremarkable time. The second and third recruits performed similarly, showing competent but standard military skills. When Jake's turn arrived, he approached the starting line with obvious confidence. "Watch and learn," he called out to the group, flexing his shoulders as he prepared to demonstrate what he considered superior military capability. He attacked the physical obstacles with brute force, his powerful build allowing him to muscle through the rope climbs and barrier crossings with impressive speed. However, when Jake reached the first firing position, his performance began to reveal some weaknesses. While his shots hit the targets, his accuracy was merely adequate, and his transitions between positions lacked the smooth efficiency of a truly skilled marksman. He compensated for his moderate shooting skills with aggressive speed, finishing the course in a decent time, but with several missed shots that cost him points. Marcus followed with a similar approach, relying heavily on his physical strength to power through the obstacles. His performance was competent but unspectacular, showing the kind of solid but unremarkable skills that characterized most recruits at their level of training. Both men finished with scores that placed them in the middle range of their training group's typical performance. As Sarah stepped up to the starting line, the mockery resumed with renewed energy. Jake, still breathing heavily from his run, called out, "Try not to smudge your makeup on the rope climb, princess. Wouldn't want to ruin that perfect look." Several other recruits who had completed earlier drills had gathered to watch, drawn by the ongoing drama surrounding Sarah's appearance and the increasingly vocal skepticism about her abilities. The crowd grew larger as word spread that something entertaining was about to happen. Sarah took her position without acknowledging the comments, her expression calm and focused. She performed a final equipment check with methodical precision, her movements deliberate and practiced. Unlike the previous participants who had approached the course with obvious eagerness to prove themselves, Sarah displayed a quiet confidence that suggested this was simply another day at work. Sergeant Rodriguez raised his hand to signal the start, studying Sarah's demeanor with professional interest. In his 2 decades of military service, he had learned to recognize the difference between genuine competence and mere bravado. Something about Sarah's calm preparation reminded him of the most skilled soldiers he had served alongside, though he couldn't quite put his finger on what made her seem different from the typical recruit. "Begin!" Rodriguez shouted, dropping his hand to start the timer. Sarah exploded into motion with a speed and fluidity that immediately caught everyone's attention. Unlike the previous participants who had approached each obstacle as a separate challenge, she moved through the course like water flowing around rocks, her transitions smooth and economical. Her compact frame, which had been the subject of so much mockery, proved to be perfectly suited for the agility-based challenges. The laughter from the watching recruits began to fade as they witnessed Sarah's performance on the physical obstacles. She scaled the rope climb with the efficiency of someone who had done it thousands of times, her technique flawless and her speed remarkable. Where Jake had used brute strength, Sarah employed perfect form and timing, completing each challenge faster than any of the previous participants. When Sarah reached the first firing position, 50 meters from a series of standard military targets, something extraordinary happened. She dropped into a shooting stance with such fluid precision that even Sergeant Rodriguez found himself leaning forward with interest. Her rifle came up smoothly, and without the lengthy aiming process that had characterized the previous shooters, she began engaging targets with mechanical efficiency. The first shot rang out, followed immediately by a second, then a third. Each report was followed by the distinctive ping of a successful hit, but what made the crowd take notice was the rapid succession of the shots. While previous participants had taken several seconds between each shot to carefully aim and adjust, Sarah was firing with the rhythm of a metronome, each shot flowing seamlessly into the next. Jake Morrison's confident smirk began to fade as he watched Sarah's performance. "She's just getting lucky," he muttered to Marcus, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "Wait until she gets to the longer-range targets. That's where real skill shows." Sarah completed the 50-meter targets in record time, every shot finding its mark with precision that bordered on the mechanical. She transitioned to the next obstacle, a series of low crawls under barbed wire, moving with the same economical grace she had displayed throughout the course. Her makeup remained intact, though a light sheen of perspiration had appeared on her forehead. The 100-meter firing position presented a more challenging set of targets, smaller and positioned at awkward angles that required shooters to engage from uncomfortable positions. Previous participants had struggled with these targets, often requiring multiple shots to achieve hits, and several had missed entirely. Under the pressure of the timed exercise, Sarah approached the position and immediately dropped into a prone shooting stance that looked like it had been copied from a military training manual. Her body alignment was perfect, her breathing controlled, and her rifle handling demonstrated a level of familiarity that spoke of extensive training and experience. The watching recruits had grown quiet, their earlier mockery replaced by grudging attention to her unexpected competence. The shots at 100 meters came with the same mechanical precision as those at 50 meters, each target falling in sequence without wasted time or motion. Sarah's shooting rhythm never varied, suggesting a level of muscle memory and training that typically took years to develop. Several of the watching recruits began to exchange glances, their earlier assumptions about her abilities clearly being challenged by her performance. Sergeant Rodriguez checked his stopwatch and found himself genuinely surprised by Sarah's time. She was not only shooting with remarkable accuracy, but doing so faster than any recruit he had seen in recent memory. Her course time was approaching record territory, and she still had the most challenging portions ahead of her. The 200-meter targets required shooters to engage from a standing position while balancing on an uneven platform, designed to simulate combat conditions where stable shooting positions were not available. This challenge had proven difficult for every previous participant, with most requiring significantly more time to achieve acceptable accuracy from the unstable platform. Sarah stepped onto the platform and immediately adapted to its movement, her body automatically adjusting to maintain stability. Her shooting stance shifted slightly to accommodate the platform's characteristics, but her fundamental technique remained unchanged. The targets at 200 meters fell with the same systematic precision as all the others, her shooting rhythm unbroken by the added difficulty. Marcus Williams found himself staring in disbelief at Sarah's performance. "This doesn't make sense," he whispered to Jake. "How is she shooting better than guys who've been training for months? And look at her time. She's moving through this course like she's done it 1,000 times before." The crowd of watching recruits had grown larger as word spread about Sarah's exceptional performance. Soldiers from other training groups had begun to gather, drawn by reports of a recruit who was destroying course records while wearing full makeup. The atmosphere had shifted from mockery to genuine amazement as Sarah continued to exceed every expectation. As Sarah approached the 400-meter firing position, even the most skeptical observers began to realize they were witnessing something unusual. The targets at this distance were small and challenging, requiring the kind of marksmanship skills that typically separated amateur shooters from true professionals. Most recruits struggled significantly at this distance, often missing more shots than they hit. Sarah settled into her shooting position with the same calm confidence she had displayed throughout the course. Her rifle came up smoothly and she began engaging targets with unwavering precision. Each shot found its mark, the distant targets falling in sequence as if she were shooting at point-blank range, rather than across a football field's worth of distance. Jake Morrison had stopped making dismissive comments entirely, his earlier bravado replaced by genuine bewilderment at what he was witnessing. The woman he had mocked for wearing makeup was demonstrating shooting skills that surpassed anything he had seen during his months of military training. Her performance was approaching the level of expertise he associated with drill instructors and career soldiers, not new recruits. The 600-meter targets represented a significant escalation in difficulty, requiring the kind of long-range marksmanship skills that many soldiers never fully developed even after years of service. At this distance, factors like wind speed, atmospheric pressure, and minute variations in ammunition could affect shot placement, demanding both technical knowledge and intuitive understanding of ballistics. Sarah paused at the 600-meter firing position, taking a moment to assess environmental conditions in a way that none of the previous shooters had done. She tested the wind direction with a few blades of grass, made subtle adjustments to her scope, and settled into a shooting position that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of long-range shooting principles. The first shot at 600 meters rang out, after a longer pause than Sarah had taken at previous distances. The target fell immediately, followed by the second, then the third. Her shooting rhythm had slowed slightly to accommodate the increased difficulty, but her accuracy remained flawless. Each shot was placed with the precision of someone who understood not just how to shoot, but how to shoot well under pressure at extended ranges. Sergeant Rodriguez found himself checking and rechecking his stopwatch, unable to believe the time Sarah was posting. Not only was she hitting every target with remarkable accuracy, but she was doing so faster than recruits who missed half their shots at these distances. Her performance was beginning to approach the level he associated with specialized military units, rather than basic training. The gathering crowd of observers had grown silent, their attention focused entirely on Sarah's methodical destruction of the course record. Soldiers who had arrived planning to enjoy a few minutes of entertainment at a struggling recruit's expense found themselves witnessing a display of marksmanship that most of them could not match even on their best days. Jake Morrison stood transfixed, his earlier confidence completely evaporated. The woman he had dismissed as a makeup artist was demonstrating skills that made his own performance look amateurish by comparison. His mind struggled to reconcile the perfectly groomed appearance that had triggered his mockery with the devastating competence she was displaying on the course. As Sarah approached the final and most challenging firing position, the atmosphere among the observers had shifted from entertainment to genuine respect. The 800-meter targets were placed at the extreme edge of what could be considered reasonable for standard military rifles, requiring the kind of precision shooting that separated true marksmen from ordinary soldiers. At 800 meters, environmental factors became critical, and even small errors in technique or judgment could send shots wide of their targets. Previous participants had struggled significantly at this distance, with most achieving only partial success, even when given extra time and multiple attempts. The targets were small, the distance was extreme, and the pressure of being observed added another layer of difficulty. Sarah spent more time preparing for the 800-meter shots than she had at any previous distance, her assessment of conditions becoming more detailed and methodical. She made several small adjustments to her scope and shooting position, displaying the kind of technical knowledge that suggested extensive training in precision shooting techniques. The first shot at 800 meters took longer than any previous shot, as Sarah took time to ensure perfect conditions and technique. When she finally pulled the trigger, the distant target fell immediately, drawing gasps of amazement from the watching soldiers. The second target fell just as quickly, followed by the third, each shot demonstrating a level of precision that few of the observers had ever witnessed. Marcus Williams shook his head in disbelief as he watched Sarah complete the 800-meter targets without a single miss. "I don't understand this," he said to anyone within hearing distance. "How does someone who looks like she stepped out of a magazine shoot better than everyone else in our entire training company? This doesn't make any sense." Sergeant Rodriguez was beginning to suspect that there was more to Sarah's background than her personnel file indicated. Her performance was not that of a typical recruit learning basic military skills, but rather of someone with extensive advanced training and significant field experience. The level of competence she was displaying typically took years to develop and suggested specialized instruction well beyond standard military training. As Sarah transitioned to the final Obstacle before the course finish line. Her time was already setting a new record by a significant margin. But more impressive than her speed was the consistent precision she had maintained throughout the entire course, hitting every single target without exception across all distances and difficulty levels. The final obstacle was a rope traverse over a simulated water hazard, requiring upper body strength and coordination while carrying full equipment. Previous participants had struggled with this challenge, some requiring multiple attempts to complete the traverse successfully. It was designed to test both physical capability and mental determination when soldiers were already fatigued from the previous challenges. Sarah approached the rope traverse with the same calm confidence she had displayed throughout the course. Despite having just completed an intensive series of physical and mental challenges, she showed no signs of fatigue or decreased performance. Her traverse was smooth and efficient, completed faster than any previous participant, and without the struggling or multiple attempts that had characterized earlier efforts. As Sarah crossed the finish line, Sergeant Rodriguez stopped his timer and stared at the display in genuine shock. Her course time was not just a new record. It was a record that shattered the previous best time by nearly 3 minutes. More remarkable still was her perfect accuracy score, having hit every single target across all distances without exception, something that no recruit in recent memory had accomplished. The crowd of watching soldiers erupted in spontaneous applause, their earlier skepticism completely replaced by amazement and respect. Many of them had never witnessed such a dominant performance on this challenging course, and several were already discussing what they had seen with the excitement of people who had witnessed something truly extraordinary. Jake Morrison stood in stunned silence, his worldview fundamentally shaken by what he had just witnessed. The woman he had mocked for her feminine appearance had just demonstrated military skills that exceeded anything he had imagined possible from a recruit. His assumptions about the correlation between appearance and capability had been thoroughly demolished. In the most public way possible, Sarah walked back toward the group with the same calm demeanor she had maintained throughout the exercise, her breathing only slightly elevated. Despite having just completed the most physically and mentally demanding course in their training program, her makeup remained largely intact, though a few wisps of hair had escaped from her regulation bun during the rope traverse. Sergeant Rodriguez approached Sarah with a mixture of professional curiosity and genuine amazement. "Outstanding performance, recruit," he said, his voice carrying a tone of respect that was rarely heard during basic training interactions. "I have to ask, what's your background? Those shooting skills didn't develop overnight." Sarah smiled politely but remained professional in her response. "Thank you, Sergeant. I've had some previous training before joining this unit." Her answer was technically accurate but deliberately vague, revealing nothing about the extensive specialized instruction that had clearly shaped her remarkable capabilities. The other recruits began to gather around Sarah, their earlier mockery completely forgotten in the face of her devastating performance. Questions flew from all directions, as soldiers tried to understand how she had achieved such an exceptional demonstration of military skills while maintaining her polished appearance. Marcus Williams was among the first to apologize, his earlier arrogance replaced by genuine humility. "I owe you an apology," he said sincerely. "I made assumptions based on your appearance that were completely wrong. That was the most impressive performance I've ever seen on this course." Jake Morrison struggled more with his change in perspective, his identity as the unit's alpha male having been challenged in a very public way. However, even his stubborn pride could not ignore the obvious reality of Sarah's superior performance. "I guess I was wrong about you," he admitted reluctantly. "That was incredible shooting." Other soldiers from various training groups continued to arrive, drawn by reports of Sarah's record-breaking performance. Many wanted to meet the recruit who had achieved something they had never seen before, and Sarah found herself surrounded by impressed peers seeking to understand her background and training. Despite the attention, Sarah remained modest and professional, deflecting most questions about her previous experience while graciously accepting the congratulations and apologies from those who had initially doubted her capabilities. She seemed genuinely unaffected by both the earlier mockery and the current praise, maintaining the same steady demeanor throughout. Sergeant Rodriguez studied Sarah's personnel file more carefully, looking for clues about her background that might explain her exceptional performance. While her official record showed standard qualifications for basic training, There were gaps and ambiguities that suggested a more complex history than typical recruits possessed. As the crowd began to disperse and normal training activities resumed, the story of Sarah's performance spread quickly throughout the base. Within hours, soldiers from other units were discussing the recruit who had set new course records while wearing full makeup, turning her into something of a local legend. The incident had fundamentally changed the dynamic within Sarah's training unit. Where she had previously been viewed with skepticism and mockery, she was now regarded with genuine respect and admiration. Her exceptional demonstration of military competence had earned her a level of credibility that typically took months to develop. Morrison found himself reconsidering many of his assumptions about military service and the diverse backgrounds of his fellow soldiers. Sarah's performance had taught him that appearances could be profoundly deceiving and that true military capability came in many different forms than he had previously imagined. The training schedule continued with additional exercises planned for the remainder of the week, but Sarah's record-breaking performance had established her as the standard by which other recruits would be measured. Her combination of exceptional skill and professional demeanor had made her an unofficial leader within their training group, despite having never sought such recognition. The following morning brought an unexpected development that would finally reveal the mystery behind Sarah's exceptional performance. As the recruits assembled for their daily briefing, Sergeant Rodriguez approached Sarah with a serious expression and a manila folder in his hand. "Chen, I need to speak with you privately," Rodriguez said, his tone suggesting official business rather than routine training matters. Sarah followed him to a quiet area away from the other recruits, who watched with curiosity as their unofficial leader was called aside for what appeared to be an important discussion. Rodriguez opened the folder and studied its contents carefully before speaking. "I made some inquiries about your background after yesterday's performance," he began. "Your shooting skills were far too advanced for someone with standard basic training. I needed to understand what I was dealing with." Sarah maintained her professional composure, though a slight tension around her eyes suggested she knew this conversation was inevitable after her dominant performance on the course. She had been careful to maintain her cover, but exceptional skill was difficult to hide when demonstrated so publicly and thoroughly. "What I found," Rodriguez continued, "explains everything about yesterday's performance. According to your complete service record, which required special clearance to access, you're not actually a new recruit. You're Staff Sergeant Sarah Chen, currently assigned to the 2nd Battalion Sniper Division, with 4 years of active duty and 2 combat deployments." The revelation hit like a thunderbolt, explaining in an instant how Sarah had achieved such devastating precision and speed on the marksmanship course. She was not a recruit learning basic military skills, but rather an experienced combat veteran with specialized training in the most demanding form of military marksmanship. Rodriguez examined the folder more closely, reading aloud some of Sarah's qualifications and achievements. Graduated top of your class from Advanced Marksmanship School, certified instructor for long-range precision shooting, recipient of 3 marksmanship medals, and holder of the division record for longest confirmed combat elimination at 1,247 meters. Sarah nodded quietly, her cover now completely blown but seemingly relieved that she no longer had to pretend to be something she was not. "Yes, Sergeant. I've been here on a special assignment, observing training methods and recruit development for a program evaluation report." The scope of Sarah's true qualifications continued to unfold as Rodriguez read through her complete record. She held certifications in advanced ballistics, tactical instruction, combat leadership, and specialized equipment operation. Her shooting credentials included qualifications on every type of rifle and precision weapon system used by their military branch. "This explains why you were shooting like someone with years of specialized training," Rodriguez said with a mixture of amazement and respect. "Because you literally have years of specialized training at the highest levels. You're not just a good shot. You're one of the military's elite precision marksmen." Rodriguez called the recruits together for an impromptu formation, sensing that this revelation needed to be shared with the entire training group. The recruits assembled quickly, curious about the unusual, gathering and wondering what announcement warranted. Interrupting their normal training schedule, "I have some information to share about yesterday's performance that I think will interest everyone," Rodriguez began, his tone suggesting something significant was about to be revealed. The recruits listened intently, particularly Jake Morrison and Marcus Williams, who had been most vocal in their initial skepticism about Sarah. The exceptional marksmanship demonstration you witnessed yesterday was performed by Sci-Fi Sergeant Sarah Chen of the 2nd Battalion Sniper Division, Rodriguez announced. She's been here on special assignment, not as a recruit, but as an experienced combat veteran evaluating our training programs. The impact of this revelation rippled through the assembled recruits like a shockwave. Suddenly, Sarah's impossible precision and speed made complete sense, as did her calm confidence and professional demeanor throughout the exercise. She had not been a struggling recruit trying to prove herself, but rather an expert marksman operating well within her established capabilities. Jake Morrison felt his face flush with embarrassment as he realized the magnitude of his error. He had mocked and dismissed one of the military's elite soldiers, someone whose combat experience and specialized training far exceeded anything he might achieve during his entire service career. His assumptions had not just been wrong, they had been spectacularly wrong. Marcus Williams experienced a similar moment of humbling realization, understanding that his construction work experience was insignificant compared to Sarah's years of combat deployment and specialized military training. The woman he had assumed was out of place in a military environment was actually far more qualified than anyone else present. The other recruits reacted with a mixture of amazement, embarrassment, and newfound respect as they processed the revelation. Many had participated in the mockery or shared the skeptical assumptions about Sarah's capabilities, and now understood that they had been criticizing someone who represented the pinnacle of military marksmanship achievement. Sarah stepped forward to address the group, her demeanor remaining professional despite the dramatic revelation of her true identity and qualifications. "I apologize for the deception," she said simply. "My assignment required observing standard training interactions, but I should have identified myself after yesterday's exercise to avoid any misunderstandings." The weeks following Sarah's revelation transformed the entire dynamic of the training unit in ways that extended far beyond simple embarrassment or admiration. Jake Morrison, who had been the most vocal in his initial mockery, found himself profoundly changed by the experience of having his assumptions so thoroughly challenged and disproven. "I learned something important about myself that day," Jake admitted during a group discussion several weeks later. "I realized I had been judging people based on surface appearances instead of recognizing that real capability comes in many different forms. Sarah taught me that my definition of what a soldier should look like was narrow and wrong." Marcus Williams experienced a similar transformation, using the incident as a catalyst for examining his own biases and preconceptions about military service. He began seeking out opportunities to learn from soldiers with diverse backgrounds and experiences, recognizing that his assumptions about correlation between appearance and ability had been fundamentally flawed. Sarah completed her evaluation assignment and prepared to return to her regular duties with the Sniper Battalion, but not before conducting several training sessions with the recruits who had initially doubted her capabilities. Her instruction proved invaluable, offering insights into advanced marksmanship techniques that typically took years for soldiers to encounter. During these training sessions, Sarah shared stories from her combat deployments and specialized training that helped the recruits understand the realities of military service beyond basic training. Her experiences provided context for the skills they were learning and demonstrated the practical applications of the techniques being taught. "The most important lesson I can share," Sarah told the group during one of her final training sessions, "is that military effectiveness comes from dedication, training, and mental discipline, not from conforming to someone else's idea of what a soldier should look like or act like. Excellence can emerge from unexpected places." Sergeant Rodriguez incorporated Sarah's evaluation findings into improvements for the training program, particularly focusing on reducing bias and prejudice among recruits. The incident had highlighted the need for better education about diversity and inclusion within military units, and Rodriguez was determined to prevent similar situations in the future. The story of Sarah's performance and subsequent revelation spread throughout the base and beyond, becoming a powerful example used in training programs to illustrate the dangers of making assumptions based on appearance. Her experience became a case study in leadership, courses about recognizing and developing talent regardless of how it might initially present itself. Jake Morrison eventually became one of the most vocal advocates for diversity and inclusion within his unit, using his own transformation as an example of how people could grow and change when confronted with evidence that challenged their preconceptions. His evolution from skeptic to supporter became an inspiring part of the larger story. The incident had lasting effects on military culture within their base, contributing to broader conversations about bias, assumption, and the many different ways that military excellence could manifest. Sarah's example became a reference point for discussions about recognizing capability in all its forms and avoiding the trap of superficial judgments. Years later, Jake Morrison would often recount the story of Sarah's performance as a defining moment in his military career and personal development. "That day taught me that being a good soldier isn't about looking tough or fitting a particular image," he would explain. "It's about competence, dedication, and the ability to perform when it matters, regardless of how you present yourself to the world." Sarah returned to her duties with the Sniper Battalion, where her skills continued to serve in critical missions requiring the highest levels of precision and expertise. However, she also became involved in training and mentorship, programs designed to help other soldiers recognize and develop their own potential without being limited by conventional expectations. The makeup that had triggered the initial mockery became a symbol of Sarah's refusal to compromise her identity to fit others' expectations of what a soldier should be. She continued to maintain her professional appearance while serving with distinction, proving that excellence in military service could coexist with personal choices about appearance and presentation. Marcus Williams later reflected on how the experience had changed his perspective on teamwork and leadership within military units. "Sarah showed us that the strongest teams are built by recognizing and respecting the diverse talents that each person brings, rather than expecting everyone to fit the same mold," he observed. The story became a permanent part of the base's culture and training mythology, referenced whenever new recruits arrived who might be tempted to make similar assumptions about their fellow soldiers. Sarah's legacy extended far beyond her individual achievement, contributing to a more inclusive and effective military environment for future generations of service members. The incident ultimately demonstrated that true military strength comes from recognizing and developing the full range of human potential, rather than limiting effectiveness through narrow definitions of what capability should look like. Sarah's performance stood as proof that excellence could emerge from the most unexpected sources when given the opportunity to flourish.